All right, welcome back to On Texas Football, special live edition of On Texas Football, wrapping up the Steve Sarkisian Monday press conference. No player availability since this is a bye week, but nonetheless, Sark met with the media for about a half hour to break down the 34-31 win over Vanderbilt, talk about the bye week, and yes, looking ahead to what's now a primetime matchup against Georgia coming up here in a little less than 2 weeks. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. I want to thank our sponsor for this live edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Duck Camp. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's at a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day at tailgating. From those sun protection shirts to keep you cool during the early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And when you do, On Texas Football listeners, use the promo code ONTexas25. That's ONTexas25 to get 25% off of your order at duckcamp.com. CJ, heard from Sark for about a half hour today. Mo acknowledged that there are some things from the Vanderbilt game that do need to get worked out. But overall, this is a coach that seems to really like the direction where his team is headed right now.
Yeah, and hard to not, right? Especially after given some of the performances we've seen from the offense, specifically the offensive line this year. But he said, look, it felt like Texas dominated this game. He said multiple times, actually, the 34-31 margin of victory didn't indicate how well he thought Texas played. And I know that we'll talk about that fourth quarter and some of the things that need to be cleaned up there, especially in the back end, Jeff. But altogether, I think Sarkisian's very happy with one of the lines of scrimmage on the offensive side. Texas getting a lot of pressure on Diego Pavia as well, and his quarterback certainly came to play as well, who was just named the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Quite an honor after 326 passing yards, 76% completion, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, you mentioned it, CJ. Colin Simmons, co-SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week, earns his first ever SEC Player of the Week honor. 25 for 33, 320 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And look, the buzz is starting again after Arch's first back-to-back 300-yard games. Just heard Todd McShay talking about it. This is what we all signed up for. You're starting to get the buzz with CJ. There is some tangible stuff here when we talk about Arch. This is what Sark had to say today when he was talking about looking back at Arch's performance against Vanderbilt and where he feels Arch is right now, 9 games into the season.
A little less anxious, feels a little more calm, feels a little more poised. I think also he feels a little more protected, I mean, when everybody likes to throw the ball when you're not about to get hit, I mean, that feels better. But yet there were moments when he was going to get hit and he delivered beautiful passes. The touchdown to Emmett in the back of the end zone, he knows he's getting ready to get hit and he delivers a beautiful ball to Emmett for a touchdown. But I just think overall confidence, in credit to Arch, he's worked at this. This has not been a smooth sail, easy ride, but he stayed committed to his process and his ability to prepare week in and week out. I think he's trusting it more. I think rapport with the receivers has been helpful. He's getting to secondary reads better than he has. And so all in all, he had the one scramble Saturday where he really didn't even need to scramble on that ball. He had an ability to check the ball down to Trey Wisner, and he wouldn't even have to scramble at that point. So minimizing some of the hits, standing upright, delivering accurate passes, and being efficient on first down, but also being efficient in 3rd and 1 to 6, 3rd and 1 to 7, I think is a way he's learning. Man, that's a little easier way to play than playing 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13 football, where you're having to throw it down the field, and now you're getting all the exotic blitzes, and now it's tougher on the O-line, and now you're taking even more hits and having to maybe force a few throws. There was not a throw Saturday where it felt forced. Even the ball to Parker over the middle, I thought was a good read, good timing, would have been a hell of a catch. But I thought he threw the ball on time to the right people Saturday.
CJ, Sark touched on it there a little bit, but the further removed we get from Arch's performance on Saturday, the 2 things that stand out to me about Arch and this offense, Texas was 5 for 5 converting 3rd and 4th or less. They haven't been able to do that consistently this year. And you look at Arch's 3rd down numbers, he's 7 of 9 for 81 yards on 3rd down. That tells me that a quarterback is in sync with his play caller. He's in sync with his offense. He trusts his eyes. He knows where he's going with the ball. And that's why we're seeing a more confident Arch Manning. CJ, I love those 3rd down numbers.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sight. And it's, again, something that's been rarely seen so far for this Texas team. And Jeff, it's interesting you mentioned, right? It's kind of like a cycle, right? Your play caller's in sync because the quarterback is playing well, because he's blocking well, and in turn, the running game is going well, which means the playbook's open all over the place. And, you can kind of just go in that circle, and it's like, well, you haven't been able to do this really the entire season. And now that you saw it against a very good front seven and a top 10 team like Vanderbilt, it gives you a lot of optimism. It feels like, for the most part, each week Texas had gone to the neighborhood pool, and the neighborhood pool had a leak in it, and you sit there and you fill it up all the way up. You spend a couple hours filling it up, and you're like, all right, we can finally enjoy the pool, enjoy the water, just to come back next week and it's full or it's empty because of a leak. And then, well, Texas finally patched it up, and now they can have all the fun they want for as long as they want. Now, will that continue into the bye week and against Georgia? We'll have to wait and see. But right now, you have to be enjoying going to games with your floaties, thinking you're going to have 3.5, 4 hours of worth of fun. And that's where Texas is right now, Jeff.
And, I want you to hit on it again because you brought it up. A.J. Milwee moving to the booth is the second week in a row they've done that. I don't think that's a coincidence why this offense has been better. But I love Sark's explanation, CJ, about the first play of the game. And he said that he comes up with those on Wednesday. Wednesday's kind of his day to really start visualizing the script. He calls it an advantage throw. It's a good throw for the quarterback, but it also lets the quarterback look at the numbers and say, hey, we got a run tag to it. If it's there, let's throw the ball to this little bubble screen or a swing pass or whatever. So basically, you're looking. It's a kind of an old school RPO. It's a throw with a run built in. If I can talk right today, he said Arch made a good decision, but it's also, hey, looking at what the opponent might do to us and figuring out where your strengths are. And Sark said, hey, early on in games lately, we've been getting a lot of nickel pressure, a lot of slot pressure from that side of the field. Well, let's use that to our advantage and kind of throw into the pressure. And that's why each of the last 2 weeks, you see the game start with Ryan Wingo making a really big play on kind of that tag with the bubble screen or the swing pass, whatever we're calling it. They're sequencing now, CJ. And I don't know if this is just Sark trusting A.J. Milwee and feeling more comfortable, Arch's development, then finding something with the offensive line, if it's everything coming together. But they're sequencing now with the play calling. It makes sense. You can say, okay, I see them running that to set this up later, and you're trying to exploit some kind of weakness in the defense. Yes, it's been more successful, obviously, which is going to make everybody happy, but it just feels like it makes sense when you're watching it unfold.
Yeah, and again, it's the maturation of the offensive line for me. Your quarterback has shown moments throughout the year, and now as a result of being blocked, as a result of, to your point, the play calling all coming together, Texas is able to benefit, and they just came off of what it was very firmly their best offensive performance of the year for those first 3 quarters. And again, they'll have to be better in the fourth, but to your point, Jeff, when your quarterback is able to be protected and Texas can utilize that 11 personnel, which we've talked about so often, it's very difficult to defend. And one thing that really stood out to me is Sark said Texas is a faster team than he thinks Texas gives itself credit for. And it kind of made me want to throw a hat or something because you have speed. You knew you had speed. You just don't utilize speed when you're sitting in 12 personnel or, running behind an offensive line that didn't have its correct combination. But right now it feels like Texas has that figured out, and it feels like Sarkisian's trending in the right direction. I have to imagine, again, Milwee's got a little bit of influence up in the box about what plays are best suited for this personnel and formation.
Yeah, no doubt. I wanted to let everybody kind of get in, let the chat get in, let us get started before we talk about the injuries. Nothing on Xavier Filsaime or Dede McCutcheon, but both of those guys came back into the game after getting banged up. Sark even said Manny Muhammad got banged up a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be anything long-term. The 2 big ones, Ryan Wingo, Sark said he doesn't envision him practicing a whole lot this week, said it's a thumb injury. CJ, he said after the game on Saturday, if it was like the most emergency of emergency situations, he could have gone in, said he doesn't anticipate him missing time. Doesn't anticipate him being 100% either. But look, you're 9 games into this. You're more than halfway through an SEC schedule. Nobody that's playing a lot of snaps is 100%. So I guess Ryan Wingo can kind of join the club. But again, we don't expect him to miss time. And Jelani McDonald's in the concussion protocol, which again, like it was with Arch, it's out of Sark's hands. We'll see what the doctors say. But CJ, at least you've got a full week before you got to worry about really getting into prep for Georgia. So Jelani's got some time to get well and get back.
Yeah, big fingers crossed for Jelani McDonald. Obviously, Texas is expecting Michael Taft to return to the field, so that's a plus. But to have Jelani against Georgia on the road would be huge for communication, leadership, etc. We'll see how he progresses this week in concussion protocol. What he said about Ryan Wingo very much holds true. Look, he's going to be completely minimized, said Sark this weekend. Probably won't see him on the field outside of perhaps a walkthrough or anything like that. Positive news, no mention of Xavier Filsaime, no mention of Dalen McCutcheon, who was in a sling post-game, all precautionary. But that is a big, big news for Texas as they work to get back to health over the bye week before heading to Athens next in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that was, to me, CJ, other than the things on the field Sark was confident about, that was the big message today. It's like, look, the good thing about winning these tight games, some of them maybe shouldn't have been as tight, but the great thing is you found a way to win them. The downside of it, now that you're coming out of it, you got a team that's in a lot of ways fatigued.
Fights ahead, and you say, okay, how can you build off of what had been a bit of a rocky road? Evidently, they did not, but this is that same kind of feeling, right? This is your best performance. It's the most tangible proof of Texas being the team that maybe a lot of people across the country thought that they could be coming into the season. And now you have your biggest test of the year, the road game in Athens against the Georgia Bulldogs, a team and program who has had your number since you joined the SEC. Now, can you continue that momentum in what would be back-to-back statement wins for a team that is desperately looking to get back into that college football playoff hunt?
CJ, I do wonder, and this is probably a question for Sark more so after the season or postseason or maybe even next spring, but this has got to be one of the more challenging years he's had in a while, just in terms of, hey, breaking in a new starting quarterback. I got to figure out what makes him tick. You've had the change with A.J. Millie, realizing, okay, we're a better offensive team when he's in the press box, and those two have more synchronicity. You've messed with combinations on the offensive line. You try to get things sorted out in the perimeter. You had your running backs in and out with injuries, and now you hit it over on ontexasfootball.com, their usage of 11 personnel, which we'll get into more on the channel this week. This CJ's had to probably be one of the tougher seasons Sark has had, just in terms of how long it's taken him to figure out which. But Sark's great about pushing the right buttons. I think it's more been the hunt for which buttons does he actually need to push and finding those buttons. Now that he's pushing them, we're seeing the offense start to click. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but just that growth for Sark and kind of finding everything, maybe now is where it's just starting to come together. It's been frustrating, but maybe we're just at the point where, hey, 9 games in, now you finally figured some things out.
Yeah, definitely. It felt like earlier in the year, Sark was trying to build a puzzle, Jeff, where all the pieces were the exact same color and there was no differentiation in terms of what was a side piece, what was in the middle, how did they all mix together? And now that you're starting to piece some of it together, you have a clearer picture. And obviously for Sark, that has to make life a whole lot easier for his coaching staff specifically. And so, yes, you've checked a lot of boxes of concerns earlier in the year, but one still remains. And I think that is that secondary who for 2 weeks in a row has been beat pretty often in the back end. And so we heard from Sark a little bit about that, and specifically at the cornerback position where we saw 5 guys see 10 or more snaps and what that might mean moving forward as well.
A combination of both. We've been exhausted defensively. I think we played 172 snaps in the last 2 games with Kentucky and Mississippi State combined. That's a lot of football. It's a lot of running. I felt like we were a little fatigued on defense, and that's why we adjusted a little bit of what we did practice-wise. The plan was to play more people, and then we kind of got forced into playing more people. Manny got banged up. I liked what Cade Phillips was doing, so we kind of left him in there. But again, experience is a great thing to have, and if we can generate a little more experience for Warren, for Kobe, for Cade to go along with Manny and Jalen, I just think it's going to help us at some point. You never know when injuries rear their ugly head, and if there was opportunities to play those guys, and they didn't play perfect. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of valuable lessons learned in that game for them, but they are talented people. But we've got to get them more opportunities so that when their number's called, they're a little bit more comfortable in the arena, when they're out there.
Yeah, CB says it right here. Says Mookie is missed, but there's no excuse for giving up a 99-yard touchdown drive with 4th and 19 from their own 1. Those are the 2 things that I think it was before I can't remember if it was before your question was asked or after, but Sark said the 2 things that really just were not to the defensive standards, regardless of personnel or anything else. Giving up that 4th and 19, where if you make a tackle, in the open field, the game's essentially over. Instead, they go on the drive and then giving up the 67-yard touchdown, which that, CJ, it's been a long time since we've seen Texas bust coverages the way coverages were busted on Saturday. And I can't remember the last time I saw one that was just that across the board bad. Like Dwayne Aquino, Mark Orfe, they probably put on that tape for everybody. And, Kenoto Hudson, they put on that tape for those guys in the DB room. I bet you nobody probably did their job right on that play. Like it was just one of those that was that bad.
Yeah, definitely a rarity, especially over what we've seen over the last 3 years. But you can't have those busts against top 10 teams and moving forward against high-flying offenses like Arkansas and Texas A&M. Like, that has to be cleaned up. And I know that Texas has been rotating a lot. They've been dinged up. Sark even mentioned at some point in the fourth quarter, Texas was down both starting safeties, both starting cornerbacks, and they have to evolve on the fly. But to your point, it's got to be fixed. It's got to be nixed moving forward. And one thing is for sure, Sark made it clear that the young guys in the room will be made very clear what the standard is in the back end and how to play to it.
Yeah, and I think the good news from this too is when you're able to rush the passer like Texas is, and I think that's where some of Sark's frustration comes in too. This pass rush, CJ, is finally producing like what we thought it would, and maybe even better than we thought it would. Texas leading the nation in sacks right now. Again, Vanderbilt had only given up 7 sacks all year. Texas got 6 on Diego Pavia on Saturday. And, Colin Simmons, again, SEC co-defensive lineman of the week. Ethan Burke gets a couple of sacks. Like you're playing about as well as you can in the trenches defensively, good enough that it shouldn't be that bad on the back end. But to your point, and Sark mentioned this too, and I agree with him. If they use this right, if they take the lessons learned from the Vanderbilt game and apply them correctly going forward, we know there's guys on the Cade Phillips and Jonah Williams got some playing time. Like there's guys with plenty of talent. But if they take these lessons and apply them properly, this could just be a blip on the radar when you look down the road at what the secondary can do.
Yeah, and of course, we're looking for immediate results, which makes it tougher to look at the youngsters taking those developmental bumps and bruises that will come, right? Everybody who's played college football has had kind of their welcome to college football moment. Obviously, a couple of those guys had them over the last 2 weeks, but Sark said he liked a lot of what he saw from Cade Phillips, and as a result, he made the decision to say, hey, we got to keep him out here. I like what I'm seeing right now. Cade Phillips, 19 snaps against Vanderbilt. That's the most that he's played this year since the Florida game. Of course, Jonah Williams, he said very important for him to even get 7 or 8 snaps, whatever it was, just to get out on the field. There's no better learning curve than being out there when the bullets are flying. And for those youngsters, that's very key for their long-term development as well.
Look, man, Jahdae Barron left Texas as one of the most decorated DBs in the history of this program. But even you go back to early in Jahdae's career, it's not like he was just locking everything down on every single snap. We can go revisionist history, but all great young defensive backs, they all struggle at some point, but the great ones, they all learn from it. They emerge from it. And CJ, I mentioned the pass rush. I asked Sark about line of scrimmage play because I know you're really high on the offensive line coming out of this. Only 1 tackle for loss allowed. I think you had 4 total runs in this game that were either 0 yards or lost yardage, which is much better than the O-line was doing. I think, what did you tell me, 6 pressures total is what PFF had this offensive line down for on Saturday. Just an outstanding job by the offensive line. You hold Vanderbilt to 58 rushing yards. A lot of that was 1 scramble by Pavia late in the game, but they pretty much got nothing out of the traditional run game. We mentioned the 6 sacks. So I asked Sark about it, just how excited he is to see this team build on winning a line of scrimmage game against a team, a program that prides itself on winning football games along the line of scrimmage.
I'm excited because I think we're getting better. I really do. I think we're getting better as a team. And again, that's why I don't think the score was kind of indicative of how the game went. We got to play better in the fourth quarter. Don't get me wrong. But we're playing better football right now. We're taking care of the ball. We've had 1 turnover in 4 games. We're taking care of the ball better. We're creating turnovers. We're stopping the run. We're starting to run the ball better. We need to run it better. We're converting third downs. We're doing a lot of things really well. We're playing better at the line of scrimmage now on both sides of the ball. So we're getting better. And so, yeah, to your point, I am excited that we were able to play a team in that style of game and minimize their strengths and make it a strength of ours. And so there was a lot of things to point to in that game where it's like, okay, we're starting to hit our stride a little bit more. And there's some things to clean up. We're not a finished product, but we're getting better. And that's a credit to our players of working at their craft. That's a credit to the coaches of trying to put players in the right position to be successful, whether it's schematically or personnel grouping wise. But I think there's a level of confidence right now with our team of, man, we're getting better. We got to stay the course because we're going to need to be better over the next 3 weeks for sure.
CJ Rocky P mentions it. I think really what we're talking about with the offense is, can we talk about the correlation between CJ's haircut and the offense looking better?
Come on. How about that? Some recognition. I like it.
The chat wants you to let that haircut breathe, CJ. They want you to let the hair breathe. So look, I let mine down. Yeah. Hey man, I haven't paid for a haircut since 2012, so I'll keep rolling the same way. Just to recap a couple of kind of big ticket items here. Yes, the Georgia game will kick off 6:30 our time, 6:30 Central on ABC. Texas getting the primetime treatment in Athens. And CJ, that really what probably, at least for Texas, it's a playoff elimination game, and for Georgia, a loss would be their second SEC loss. I don't want to get too far into this as we wrap this up, but we talked about it, and I actually thought of another team. You have a scenario where Texas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Alabama could all end up the regular season being 10-2.
Yeah.
Not all those teams would be able to get into the playoff.
Yeah. That was an interesting conversation that we thought, we had as we were leaving, Jeff, but the SEC it's so muddied right now, and there's a lot of good teams, right? There's not maybe that one super elite team. Maybe you could put A&M in that conversation. We'll see. They still, November is not a month that's been friendly to them over the last few years or really ever. But, when you look at it from the perspective of teams that could make the college football playoff, boy, is there still a lot to go. And Sark was asked, hey, do you see a 9-3 team getting in the SEC? He said, first off, it was laughable last year that there were only 3 teams in this conference that made the college football playoff, and none of them were 9-3. He said, look, we play in the toughest conference in the country. There's a lot to go. The easiest thing for us is to take care of business, win in Georgia, and then come back home and finish the season with 2 wins in the regular season and essentially just take care of our business. That's the message from Sark, but ultimately he was putting on the SEC cap a little bit, and making sure that folks knew that this conference is pretty tough.
He should. Now, I don't think all those teams are going to end up 10-2. And you mentioned A&M. Ole Miss is kind of just sitting out there hanging out with that one SEC loss, and Lane Kiffin's team is still winning games. But, hey, this is why I always hesitate to make like wholesale remarks about a team unless it's just blatantly obvious in September and October, because all you want when you're in this conference is you want to get to November with the chance, and Texas is in November with the chance to finish this thing strong. So the playoff reveal is tomorrow. Again, Arch Manning, SEC Player of the Week. Colin Simmons, co-SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Also on the injury front, nothing on Xavier Filsaime or Day-Day McCutcheon. Jelani McDonald is in concussion protocol. Ryan Wingo does have the thumb injury. Sark said doesn't expect him to miss time in terms of games. Probably going to sounds like they're going to basically shut him down this week and get him ready for the Georgia game. Doesn't expect him to be 100% either, so they'll kind of monitor that. But our reporting on Texas football has kind of been consistent. Don't expect Ryan Wingo to miss any game time, and probably don't want him to, because you want him to get back out there because he's had a couple of really good weeks here where he's been really productive. CJ, thanks for the knowledge and expertise, as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it, putting those cuts together. Thank you to our friends at Duck Camp for sponsoring this live edition of On Texas Football. Don't forget, CJ, Coach Bob Shipley, and Rod Babers are on the Winning Drive tonight. That live stream starting right around 7:15. We've got lunch with the coach up on the channel right now. Plenty of content to come later today and throughout the week here on the On Texas Football YouTube channel. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas football game. And don't forget, for On Texas basketball, Jerry Hamilton and I will be doing a live watch with us tomorrow night. CJ, you might even pop in and hang out for a little bit. Texas and Duke opening the season in Charlotte, 7:45 tip for that game. So it's getting to that point where we got football right in the thick of a conference championship race, basketball getting started. Vic Schaefer and the Texas women get started tonight. I know Texas volleyball took a couple of tough losses over the weekend, but they're still very much in the hunt, as Jared Elliott's teams always are. So good things happening on the 40 acres, and we've got it all for you here at On Texas Football and ontexasfootball.com. CJ, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I'm excited for a bye week. I'm sure most of y'all are as well, for a little sit back, relax, and let the dominoes fall as they may in SEC play. It's November. These are the games that they remember, says Sarkisian, so I'm excited for it.
No doubt. All right, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, welcome.
Welcome.